G'day folks, today I'm going to go through who really won the mega trade, and today I'm going to give you some exclusive insight that you won't find anywhere else into who, at least I believe, clubs would be picking with those, you could call it higher end picks, both this year and next year. So, firstly, we've got North Melbourne, traded out Horne-Francis, pick one, which I believe had they retained would have been George Wardlaw. And then, of course, you've got the 2023 third round pick, which was tied to Freo. And they traded in pick two, which I believe again would be George Wardlaw. Three, Harry Sheezel, I think would be the most probable. And then you've got 40, 43, both of which are handy because you've also got Cooper Harvey, who North Melbourne will be keen to match bids on, just in case a bid comes inside the top 40. And then, of course, you've got the 2023 future first round pick. So, with North Melbourne's forward line potentially suspect, someone like an Archer Reed as a 200 centimetre key forward who's shown some early promise would be the type of player that they may potentially consider, to give a very premature name, to say the least there. So the key notes quickly for North Melbourne, as per in my article on ESPN reviewing the trade period. So my belief is that between pick 1, 2, and 3, there's no meaningful separation. So that's the first thing. But additional to that as well, as you can see with these names here, well, I believe North Melbourne are actually at picks 2 and 3 going to be able to secure their two preferred players in this draft. Of course, aside from Ashcroft, who bids would be matched for anyway, irrespective by Brisbane. So based on that, well, is this a good result for North Melbourne? Well, of course, in Horne-Francis and pick 1, they're the two best, I guess you could call them assets that were part of this deal. But of course, all the picks back were very handy. And if you're able to get the same player at 2 as you are at 1, well, there's no meaningful difference. But with that said, if I was to go through who I believe out of Horne-Francis, Wardlaw, and Sheezel will have the best career, I'm still of the belief that that player will be Horne-Francis. I believe with North Melbourne, he, of course, had a poor year, but looking at what he was doing in 2021, I believe he was going better in the SANFL at the very end of that season. So in a more stable environment where he feels a bit more comfortable, I do believe that Horne-Francis will achieve great things. So is it a win? Is it a loss for North Melbourne? Well, I would describe it as adequate compensation. It's certainly not a win, and certainly from a marketing perspective, it hurts. But at the same time, look, they did reasonably enough. So out of this deal, I don't actually consider North Melbourne to be the loser, which may surprise some people, of course, given the, I guess, former pick 1 and then the upcoming pick 1, of course, are leaving them. So that's something at least for North Melbourne fans to be optimistic about there. And then with Port Adelaide, so they trade out pick 8. So I think had they retained that pick, Mateus Filippo, a local South Australian talent, would have been a chance. And for me, actually, of all the live picks available, I actually think that he's actually the best player in the pool, aside from, of course, Ashcroft, who bids will be matched on. But I believe Filippo has the highest upside if it's realised. So I'm incredibly high on his talent, it's fair to say, and probably a good chance that is available. And I think he would have been a good fit for Port Adelaide had they retained that pick. So other picks that they traded out, you've got 43, 53, 57, the 2023, their 2023 future first. So had they retained that pick, I think a Jack Deline, of course, if he was going to have a good season next year, I think would be in the mix. He's someone where, just seeing what he's been doing in SA the last 2 years, he's just been an absolute jet in terms of his goal kicking. So sort of your small marking forward can crumb as well, but definitely a marking force for a small, and really hits the scoreboard like anything. So for those looking for a quick player comparison and quick feel, think of him as your Jamie Elliott equivalent, I guess you could say. So really good forward. And with Port Adelaide's forward line deficiencies, and again being a local talent, he's someone around that range, wherever Port Adelaide would pick. Let's assume sort of around that pick 10 mark, perhaps. I think a Deline would be someone where, if that draft was happening tomorrow, would be suitable around that range and would be someone Port Adelaide would consider. And then, of course, you've got the 2023 second round pick and 2023 third round pick. And then trading in, well, they've got Jason Horne-Francis, so he's, of course, the star of the deal. You've got Junior Rioli, who look, is a reasonable forward. And given Port Adelaide's lacking front half, probably will be best 22. And then you've got the 2023 second round pick, which was tied to Collingwood, and you've got the 2023 future third round pick tied to Fremantle. So, look, Port Adelaide have given up a lot, but they've, with that said, gained the best player in this deal. So, look, did they win this trade? Did they lose this trade? My personal view is that Port Adelaide were, relatively speaking, one of the winners, but not necessarily the club that won the trade. So I would rate out of this trade Port Adelaide to have achieved the second best result. The potential loss of Filippo for me really does actually hurt to quite a degree. And additionally as well, that future first, depending on how Port Adelaide finish, could be something as well that they come back to regret. But look, with the addition of Horne-Francis, I do believe that actually bolsters their group, both midfield and forward. So even with the loss of, say, a Carl Amon, look, I think Port Adelaide will again be a competitive team. And look, I actually do give them fairly reasonable top 8 chances. I don't think they started off this past year quite poorly, but I think they're a little bit better than that, and they should be sort of pushing towards that top 8 spot. So we'll have to see how that works out. On West Coast's account, so traded out Junior Rioli and pick 2. Had they retained that pick 2, look, I'm not sure who they would have picked, honestly. It could have been a Wardlaw, could have been a Sheasel, depending on who has pick 1. So had pick 1 changed hands already to Greater Western Sydney, then probably a Wardlaw would be there and be the pick. But if North Melbourne were taking it, I would probably say Wardlaw would have been the likely pick 1, and maybe it would have been a Sheasel at 2. Could have been an Elijah Sardis, perhaps, as another well-performed type who I think would have appealed to West Coast. And then you've also got pick 40 as well. And then in terms of those being traded in, well, you've got pick 8. So a Reuben Ginbey might be a chance around that sort of point as a Western Australian mid who performed really well during the under-18 champs and is that sort of big bull of a midfielder. Very good inside, very consistent. And he's also got quite a bit of experience as well playing in defence, but definitely looks best as a mid. Not guaranteeing he'll be that pick, and look, personally, he's not one I would take around that range with someone like a Mateus Filippo potentially available. So that could potentially take away some of the shine from this trade or some of the potential. Pick 12, Elijah Hewitt. So again, another local midfielder, but he's someone where I think there's a high probability West Coast take him if he's available with that second pick. So with West Coast, their typical drafting tendencies are towards going for those who have been good for a number of years. And Elijah Hewitt was already someone who he'd arrived last year. So he'd arrived in 2021. So, and additionally, sort of being that really advanced player, that's what West Coast tend to favour. So I think given also being the local talent, there's a good probability he's the pick. So around 12 would be reasonable. For me personally, I'd go probably a Filippo and Bustlinger combination at 8 and 12 if they're both available as those, I guess, value picks. Bustlinger being a key defender from WA. So we'll have to see there. But then as well, you've got the 2023 second round pick tied to Port Adelaide, and you've got the 2023 third round pick also tied to Port Adelaide. So my evaluation of West Coast is that, look, Junior Rioli I don't look at as an essential piece going forward for them. And then, look, the pick 2, I don't honestly see, assuming good talent ID at pick 8, that there's all that much difference between 2 and 8. So if I can get a Filippo at 8, well, he'd be the same guy I'd be taking at 2. So look, if I was taking that that pick, well, I would be very keen to move that pick 2 back just as West Coast in this situation are. And it looks like they'll more likely than not go the local flavour. But look, if it was me in that situation picking, the side of this trade I would personally take would actually be West Coast's, and I would be evaluating them as having won this trade, given I look at that sort of 7 and 8 mark in that absolute sweet spot in this draft where you can get an exceptional amount of value and nothing meaningfully different to picks 1, 2, and 3. So that's my personal take there. And then, of course, you've got Greater Western Sydney. So they traded pick 3, which had they retained it, I think they would have been able to secure Aaron Cadman. Pick 12, you've got Jet Buslinger, who I think GWS may have considered going for a key defender, given they're in that sort of, I guess, retooling space. just maybe to add an additional sort of key defender back there, just to add to their numbers. And then also you've got the 2023 second round pick tied to Collingwood. So, and then of course what they trade in, we'll pick one. Well, I think it would be the same outcome had they had pick 3. So pick 1, it sounds highly likely that they're going to be selecting Aaron Cadman. The one question would be, well, do they bid on Will Ashcroft first at 1 and then take Cadman with what would then become pick 2? So that's the main question around the pick 1 as things stand. And then, of course, they've also received picks 53 and 57 in this exchange. So with GWS, well, given my evaluation is picks 1 and 3, there's no meaningful difference. And additionally, it looks in this instance that GWS will be securing the exact same player at 1 as they would have at 3. Well, given that, well, I'm not liking this trade at all for Greater Western Sydney. And yeah, look, given those facts, well, I consider GWS to be on the losing end of this trade for fairly self-explanatory reasons. So, yeah, look, if you guys enjoyed this video, make sure you like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for future updates. And let me know in the comments section below, who do you think won or lost this trade?